This video is brought to you by our patrons. If you want to make sure we can create more content like this, consider supporting us on our Patreon. Thank you. Hello and welcome to part 3 of Utilitarianism, chapter 2. Not to make an appeal to authority or anything, but one way to summarize the utilitarian ideal is through the words of Jesus Christ. To do as you would be done by, and to love your neighbor as yourself. To get as close as possible to that ideal, utility would enjoin, first, that laws and social arrangements should place the happiness or interest of every individual as nearly as possible in harmony with the interest of the whole. Secondly, education and opinion, which have such a vast power over the human character, should establish in the mind of every individual an association between their own personal happiness and the good of the whole. Now, some criticisms of utilitarianism are just criticisms of the field of ethics in general. Some naturally respond that it's just too much to ask of people that all of their actions align with the good of the whole or take the good of the whole into account. But this is based in a misunderstanding of what the purpose of ethics even are, which are to outline what our duties are, not really making the assertion that an individual should act in the name of duty at literally every moment of their entire life, but that there are things that we can strive to be. It's also fine to focus primarily on the people around you than broader society at all times, so long as focusing on the individuals around you doesn't mean you're destroying society or hurting people, other people. And utilitarianism also recognizes that there are qualities of value that a person might have that are unrelated to doing good for others. And also that doing good for others doesn't necessarily make you a good person. You could just be doing it for praise, for example. Now, if there is going to be a valid criticism of utilitarians, although not utilitarianism, it is that many utilitarians fall into the trap of only perceiving somebody's worth through the utilitarian moral standards, that other qualities a person has that fall outside the utilitarian principles are not considered when weighing a person's value or worth, or whether they're a good person or not. For example, not considering the more artistic or sentimental aspects of a person. However, again, this is not really a criticism of utilitarians or utilitarianism, rather just moralists, which is a category that utilitarians just happen to fall into. So yes, we can criticize ethics, but that doesn't mean utilitarianism is a worse field of ethics. We can just criticize ethics as a whole. But on the whole, a doctrine which brings prominently forward the interest that mankind have in the repression and prevention of conduct which violates the moral law is likely to be inferior to no other in turning the sanctions of opinion against such violations, like undervaluing some individuals. And Mill addresses some other misunderstandings of utilitarianism, although he points out that they are stupid, but that smart people still often fall into them because even smart people are susceptible to ignorance, willful ignorance, and bias. Stupid idea number 1. Utilitarianism is anti-religious. Well, if you're under the impression that God wants nice things for its creations, then utilitarianism, if anything, is the most religious of all the doctrines. If you think that ethical frameworks get in the way of you having your personal discussion between you and God, that's just sort of a silly misunderstanding of the purpose of ethics, which is to help us discuss what is right and wrong. So that's what you're doing anyway. Stupid idea number 2. Utility equals expediency. Expediency being the individual doing what is most advantageous to them or most convenient. Well, insofar as expediency is hurtful, it's not exactly useful, is it? I.e., the meaning of utility. So we're just having trouble with words here, aren't we? A good rule of thumb is to look up the meaning of words or philosophies or stances before you proclaim your disagreement with them. And finally, wrapping up this chapter, simply agreeing upon utility as our guiding principle for morality does not free us from all the questions and little knots to comb out that will still arise as we get to more specific scenarios and situations. Utility may be our underlying rule, our first principle, if you will, but a philosophy is not complete without building upon that first principle with further explanatory principles on top of it. And as with every system of ethics, there exist scenarios in which there are conflicts between different obligations. In these circumstances, an individual must simply do their best and go back and consult the first principle, but keeping in mind that a fully satisfactory conclusion may not be possible. In other words, sometimes in certain situations, there's just a gray zone, and we have to pick the best option, although it may not be a perfect option. Just like when you have to pick between killing one person on the train track versus 5, well, it's still sad for that one person. So, I mean, you might be fully satisfied. But anyway, I'd like to thank our Patreons. Let me know if the video looks weird. I hope everyone has a wonderful week and enjoyed this chapter, the end of chapter 2, and we will be back soon with chapter 3 of the ultimate sanction of the principle of utility. Bye! Hey, do you hate all of the ads on our videos? Well, it doesn't have to be this way. There is a way out. We've decided that for every 10 patrons, we will turn off all of the ads on a single book. For example, all the ads on Das Kapital will be turned off. Currently, we're at 7, so if we just get 3 more, we can turn off the ads for an entire book series. And at 20, we'll turn off the ads for another book series. And we will allow our patrons to vote on which book gets its ads turned off. So if that sounds good to you, please consider signing up at our patreon.com/cbchapter.